Hello and welcome to episode 4, the final episode for now of Game vs Real, and it's only a hiatus. The series will be coming back in the future, but of course to make more episodes I need to get footage of more vehicles that I've driven and ridden, and for the moment I don't have more. So of course we're in quarantine lockdown, so it's not the easiest time to get footage of a vehicle, but it will be coming back in future. And if you are new to the series, we've got 3 previous episodes featuring Maseratis, Touareg V10s, etc. So there's plenty to check out if you're a fan of different games. Maybe you're more of a car fan than a bike fan or vice versa. And for this particular one, I actually changed the game that I'm comparing the bike to. Because of course the premise of the series is I take a real vehicle, on this occasion a motorcycle, and I compare my time riding the real thing to how it feels in a video game. How accurate does it feel to real life? How accurate are the specs? How fun is it? Does it get across the personality and the character of the vehicle into the game? Of course, only as far as a game can. It can only be so realistic. And with that in mind, the vehicle of choice is the Energica Eva. Now I do need to say, in a similar way to last time's episode with the Maserati Quattroporte, the vehicle in question is slightly different, because although I did ride an Energica Eva, the one that I rode was the SS9. You can see a difference, the single headlight instead of the double. It's a newer vehicle, it has different technology, but the essential underpinnings of the bike are still there. So in a similar way to the Maserati, but far more close than the Maserati example, they are slightly different bikes. However, more than enough of the personality is similar to the base platform for it to still be an accurate comparison. Plus, of course, I'm not comparing the in-game specs to the bike that I rode, I'm comparing the in-game specs to the actual bike in real life, not the one that I rode, so it's still going to be a fair comparison. Now, speaking to that accuracy first of all, of course we break down each vehicle into 3 categories. The accuracy of the specs, the proportions, the visuals, even the graphics, then the realism, does it feel and perform and handle like the real bike or car would and should, and finally the fun factor. Does it have that personality and the character, and does it put the smile on your face that a particular vehicle does? Again, of course it's never going to make you as happy as driving or riding the real thing, but is it at least close enough for a game? First of all then, let's get into the accuracy of the vehicle. Is it well represented in the game from a visual point of view? Are the proportions correct? Does it look accurate to real life? Are these specs accurate to real life? The power, the weight, the torque, all that kind of stuff, which is generally speaking pretty easy to double check against real world sources. Well, interestingly, in Ride 2, the bike is more accurate to real life than it is in this game. Now the graphics are better in Ride 3, of course. However, the power is actually wrong, which is weird, because how do you go from having the right specs in the second game to the wrong specs in the third one? Somebody obviously didn't double check or do their job properly. However, there is one inaccuracy which both games share, and it's a pretty big one. More so, you could argue, for a bike than it would be for a car, and that is the weight. Because in both Ride 2 and Ride 3, the Eva weighs 30 kilos less than it should. 30 kilos less than the real bike does. And in bike terms, 30 kilos is a colossal difference. Now, I'm not sure if they did that deliberately, but it's not accurate to the real specs that I could find, even though everything else matched up to what they have in the game, you know, power, torque, all that kind of stuff. So it is curious that they chose to not only have that wrong in the second game, but keep that inaccuracy in the third one as well. Maybe they're trying to make the bike a little bit more competitive, I'm not sure. But whatever the case may be, it is wrong nonetheless. 30 kilos for a bike is a huge difference. In car terms, that would be about like 150 kilos difference. So like the difference between a hatchback and like a TVR sports car, it's a pretty big difference. And as well as that, the top speed is actually inaccurate in Ride 3 as well. And that is another very curious thing, because in the second game, once again, it was correct. So it's very strange how they managed to take a bike that was right to begin with, and then make the power wrong and the top speed wrong in the third game. Very strange choice, but in the second game it's spot on. It does 125 miles an hour, which is exactly what it should do. In this game it's faster than that, so that's simply inaccurate. Now, I would have given the second game a 4 out of 5, because it's only the weight that was wrong. That's very impressive. In this game though, they got the top speed wrong and the weight wrong, so I'm going to have to give it a 3. in a similar way to the first episode with the BMW i8, because likewise that car had the wrong power, the wrong weight, and the wrong top speed. So far, the second game is superior. A 4 out of 5 to Ride 3's 3 out of 5. What then about the realism? This could be where the third game and its updated physics and heavier bikes has an advantage. Well, that's exactly true, because I will say that on this count, the third game definitely beats Ride 2. As much as I love the second game, I actually like the second game more. Ride 3 is definitely more accurate to how the Energica felt when I was riding it, both at lower and higher speeds. To the point where I'm actually giving Ride 3 a 5 out of 5 for realism. It does feel like the real bike. You can feel that just instant torque under throttle, but more importantly, you can feel more of the weight through corners, which is somewhat ironic given that the weight is still wrong on paper, which is weird. You know, at least if they got it wrong on paper, they got the feeling right, and that's more important, you could say anyway. And there's not really any point in explaining it more than that. They simply nailed it. As far as I'm concerned, you can feel the weight, you can feel the slight sluggishness of the extra weight through lower speed corners, but at the same time, just that relentless throttle when you open it up out of a corner, which is, again, exactly what the bike feels like. And you can see some footage of me on the bike with that extreme acceleration as well. Fantastic experience. The second game I would still give a 4 though, which isn't bad. 4 out of 5 is still very impressive, but the reason why the second game would not get a full 5 out of 5 is because the handling is way too light. It feels good, but it's too light. This game, you get much more of that weight through. With some other bikes, I find that annoying, but with the Energica, that is accurate to real life. And last, but most definitely not least, we have, of course, the fun factor. This one is essentially a combination of everything else. Are the specs, are the looks, are the handling, are the feel and the physics all put together in a way that makes this experience even a fraction of as good as it feels in real life? Does it feel authentic to that vehicle? Well, on this count, you might be surprised, but I'm giving it another 5, because it really does feel as close as I felt to the actual bike in a game. Ride 2 still feels good. In fact, I gave that a 5 out of 5 as well, because even with the lighter handling, it still gives you the rush and the fun and just the grin on your face experience that an electric bike gives you, that in my experience, a traditional bike simply doesn't for me. Now, this one definitely is more accurate, and that adds to the score, because you do feel the weight, you feel the slightly cumbersome handling, as I said, but it feels so much like real life. And of course, the reason why this score can still be a full 5 out of 5, despite the previous, technical inaccuracies, is because stuff like top speed or inaccurate weight or inaccurate power, as long as they're not too ridiculous, if it was a 200 mile an hour bike that weighs 10 kilos, of course I couldn't give it that score, but because it's still in the right ballpark to some degree, especially when it comes to power and torque, and because the handling is so spot on, well, that is why I'm still giving it a full 5. It does put a smile on your face, and it does give you, especially with some of the camera angles that you can see in this replay, it really does give you that rush that the bike actually does. The only thing, in fact, that the game doesn't replicate that I wish it could is the rush of wind coming over you under throttle. And of course, a game could never do that. Although it would be interesting if you made your own gaming rig. You could kind of have like a high-powered fan in the background and somehow have maybe a connection to your console so that it speeds up with your throttle. That would be kind of a cool little mod to do. I'm sure somebody has. But that's the only thing that's missing, really. Beyond that, I've got to say that even though Ride 2 is my favourite game of the Ride trilogy so far, and of course I'm looking forward to seeing what Ride 4 is like this year, if it still comes out this year at this point, I will say that on this specific occasion, Ride 3 is superior, in my opinion, in terms of how it portrays the Energica Eva within the game. For the technical side, it's not as good as the second game, but for the feel and the performance, the majority of the performance at least, it does feel more like the real thing, and for that, I applaud it. And of course, all that's left is to give it my score. Now this one, to me, was slightly difficult to decide, because it has to fall somewhere between the BMW i8 from episode 1 and the Touareg from episode 2. Because for me, the Touareg was a perfect experience in Test Drive Unlimited, about as close as it could have been for that game. The BMW was very good, but with some flaws. And that is essentially what I feel this is like as well, because in a similar way to that Beamer, the top speed is wrong, the power is wrong, the weight is wrong. At the same time though, the Beamer also didn't have accurate handling, and that was a much more important thing, because the handling makes up so much of the character of a car, or any vehicle in fact. So on this occasion, because of the fact that the physics and the weight and the sound and the rush and the realism of everything else apart from just the on-paper spec and a slightly wrong top speed, it means that to me, this bike in Ride 3 gets an A. And ultimately, of course, that's it for the series so far. Now, as I said, it is coming back in future, so if you enjoy these episodes, don't worry, it's only on hiatus. I'm not cancelling the series by any stretch. If you are new to the series, please watch the other ones. I'm sure you'll enjoy those as well. And one of the things that I love about making these videos is that each one is so different. New game, new vehicle. As you could see from this one, doesn't even necessarily have to be a car. It keeps it fresh and varied, and as a creative, video producer, it's a lot of fun to make a video like that where every episode is so different. So if you are new to the series, of course, all of your support is greatly appreciated, and by extension, if you're new to the channel, please do slap that notification bell, because otherwise YouTube simply won't show you my new videos, which is kind of a problem. But overall, that's it for this installment. Of course, I will see you guys next time, and for now, as always, thanks for watching.